Now back to the show. This is AM 650's The Law Show.
Welcome back. I'm Sterling Fox, joined in studio by Joe Murphy and Steve Gibson from Murphy Batista LLP, Vancouver personal injury lawyers. Joe Murphy, I was asking you before the break about the difficult cases, the really tough cases that your firm deals with, and you've been there 32 years and counting now, and you talked about brain injury, traumatic brain injury cases being particularly difficult, especially those involving young children.
Yes.
What driving cases are most difficult? Because children aren't driving; they're passengers when they're injured in these horrible car accidents. But with clients who are drivers, what is the usual cause of their being with you?
Well, you can get complicated liability situations. You can get a left-turning vehicle. There's always a big dispute. Okay, who did what? The oncoming vehicle, were they speeding? When did the light color change?
Okay.
If you can get cases that involve claim against the road contractor. I had a case a few years ago of a young mother driving her children to school in the Kootenays, and the car skidded on ice and rolled, and she ended up a high-level quad. And the issue then was whether this road should have been sanded and salted, which would have avoided the accident. And that was very contentious because we had to look at the road contractor and what they did and didn't do, and
right.
what their records did and did not show. The longer you wait to hire a lawyer, the older and staler the evidence becomes. Witnesses forget what happened or
Sure.
just disappear. Things change, the scene changes, the vehicle changes. As an example, Sterling, if someone's involved in an accident, one of the things we often will do is hire an engineer to examine the vehicle so that they can confirm the seatbelt was worn.
Oh, okay.
Once the vehicle's gone, that evidence is gone with them. And there's still evidence. You know, I have a case I'm looking at where a client is alleged not to have had a seatbelt on, but the ambulance attendants who extracted him from the car said they had to undo the belt to get him out. Well, that's pretty compelling evidence.
I was going to say, yeah.
Another case I had of a fellow, a tourist here, in a rollover who broke his neck. He was a quadriplegic. The defense engineer said the seatbelt wasn't used, and an inspection of the vehicle showed the seatbelt actually had to be cut. Well, if it's not used, you're not going to cut it.
Right.
It's cut to extract people.
Right.
So there's various things like that.
I'm intrigued now. Back to the Kootenays and that case where the woman's car flipped, and there was some conflict regarding road maintenance schedules by the contractor. How did that case end up, Joe?
Well, it ended up, fortunately, that we settled the case, and she got enough money that she will be well taken care of for the rest of her life. When we finished the case, she was mid-30s. The family had moved to Calgary because she needed to be closer to family and to the facilities she needed as a quadriplegic.
Right.
But it was really tragic because she had 3 little kids at the time and was a very busy, active mother. Her husband had his own little business that she was involved in, plus she had a little shop in the town they lived in, a really dynamic lady, and she's still dynamic, but when you're a high-level quad,
right.
Boy, life is difficult.
And
challenging.
And you see this stuff in the papers. Car accident victim, now a quadriplegic, receives a 7-figure settlement, and you go, well, there you go. Now there's a lady who's not going to have any more issues for the rest of her life, but she's a quadriplegic. She'll never enjoy the quality of life that she had up until the moment she hit that icy patch on that Kootenay highway.
No, without a doubt. You look at what a quad entails, and being a quad is not just being in a wheelchair. There's all the other problems they have that are hidden, the bowel problems, the bladder problems,
Sure.
the sensory problems, the fatigue problems.
Skin issues.
Skin issues. Christopher Reeves is probably one of the most famous quadriplegics,
right.
The actor.
Yes.
And he died from complications from a bed sore, a pressure sore. So what you see with a quad, they're in a wheelchair, is just the tip of the iceberg of all the problems and challenges they have. And to live in our world, even though things appear to be so accessible, If you're a quadriplegic, you can't.
And no matter how many millions of dollars you've got in the bank, it's still not going to affect your ability to move about society as successfully as you once could.
Sterling, let me give you a little example. We all drive cars, and we all pull in from time to time and have to fill up our tank.
Yep.
We shake our heads at the cost. If you're a quadriplegic and you pull into a gas station self-serve, how do you fill up?
Mm-hmm.
How do you? Do you ask someone, do you give them your credit card and ask them to fill up your tank? Because even if you can get out of your car and get into a wheelchair, which is quite a process.
Sure it is, yeah.
You can't reach these machines that are up on these big curves.
Right.
And if you park your car beside that, you can't get your wheelchair in to be able to do that. So just little things that the rest of us take so for granted.
Right.
We wouldn't even think about it. That for paraplegic, quadriplegic becomes a huge barrier. And I know it was Edmonton, they did a study on a year or two ago. They found in all of Edmonton there was 4 full-service stations, and they're not open all night.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do? Just one little thing in your life that becomes a barrier.
And yet when people come to you at Murphy Batista asking, and I'm sure frequently, more often than not, with tears in their eyes, can you please help me get my life back? You have to say, we'll do our best, Steve, but it's never going to be the same, is it?
With some people, unfortunately, the injuries will never fully resolve. And so the only thing we can do is seek compensation for what that person has lost on a permanent basis. Otherwise, it's a sad reality that money, it doesn't fix people. All it does is compensate for what they have to go through.
Makes
for the
life
rest
a
of
little more tolerable.
With quads, where you see big, huge settlements or judgments, I mean, that money has to last over a lifetime.
Exactly.
And they have to be very careful with that money. So that is something, people don't think of. They think, lottery winning early on, but this is a lifelong
hardly a windfall,
is it? No windfall.
Yeah, exactly. So, but put us in your office. Let's suppose now someone listening to the program right now has been in a situation where they've received some kind of personal injury. They're not happy about it. They're uncomfortable. They've been to the doctor. It's not. The doctor says, I can't quite put my finger on it, but yeah, you're definitely not the same as you used to be, and you can probably attribute to that car you were riding in over Christmas time. So they come to Murphy Batista because they heard about it on the radio, and you guys sound like real people. So when they come to the office, Steve, what should they bring with them on that first visit, and what do you want to know?
All right. Okay, well, the first thing I want to do is find out a little bit about their history. So I like to hear, honestly, going way back to, high school, what they've done educationally, their work history, what their current job is, their family situation. I need to know if there's children involved.
Sure.
What kind of home they live in. Does it require a lot of maintenance, outdoor work, or do they live in a condo? Mm-hmm. So a lot of the background in terms of history is very important, and then we turn to the accident, how it happened, and I want to know all the little details. If liability is going to be an issue, that becomes critical. We need to know who witnesses are. We need to get the police accident file number if the police came, so we can investigate with the police and get a lot of background information.
And presumably, of course, there's an ICBC claim number attached to all of this as well. Right?
Yes. We like to know who the adjuster is that they're dealing with ICBC, the correspondence that they have. If you're emailing with adjusters, we like to have that correspondence. Tax returns, so we see a bit of like people say, why do you need my tax returns? If someone is having problems returning to work and looks like there might be an issue with them being able to function in their job, we like to have a little bit of earnings history. So
if there is to be an application for an award for lost wages or ability to work, you got to have some wage to refer to.
Yep. Yeah. A list of the types of medical treatment that they've been to, receipts, so that we can help get them reimbursed, and then a comprehensive medical history for the person is very important. Some people feel that when they come in to talk to a lawyer, if they've had problems in the past, they don't like to talk about that or share it. They think the lawyer won't they won't want to help.
Right.
But nothing's further from the truth.
And also maybe they're even playing judge and saying, well, there's this weird medical thing that happened 10 years ago, but it really doesn't relate to the case at hand, so I'm not even going to share it with this lawyer because it's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
That is useful information.
It is, and sometimes people, if they've got prior problems, we can argue that they are vulnerable or susceptible to more injury because of a car accident. So sometimes a previous history of having some difficulties can actually help in terms of compensation. So people shouldn't run from their history.
All of these initial conversations are, in many ways, a two-way street. You're interested in speaking with the client to determine his or her situation, whether that case may be the sort of case that you'd be interested in taking on. And on the other side of the desk, the person is going, well, these are the people that I heard about on the radio, or this is the firm that somebody's mom referred me to, but do I actually want these guys to be my lawyers? So it's a two-way street. And Joe Murphy, you said that frequently, if possible, on the phone before that first meeting, you will ask a prospective client to come to the office with some of the information that Steve's already talked about, but you go one step further and say, and if possible, please bring someone else with you. Why do you do that?
Yeah. Sterling, I encourage them to bring a significant other with them because that significant other's there to help them take in the information that we're providing. That other person is there to provide us with additional information.
Okay.
The more significant the injury, the more valuable it is to talk to someone else, a friend, a relative, a mother, brother, father, sister, and get their perspective on how things are going. It's interesting with a brain injury, and again, this is something I've learned over many, many years, is the brain injured person usually has the least understanding of how the brain injury affects them.
Oh.
So the brain
injured,
injured
just doing their best to carry on, right?
And they're just
oblivious.
don't.
Yeah.
If I have a knee injury and my knee swells up and gets sore, I know better than anyone else what's wrong with my knee.
Sure.
But if I have a brain injury that affects my overall functioning, it's the other people in my life who have the best understanding of what that is.
Right, okay.
So it's common in a first meeting with a brain injured person where I say, "How are you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine." And usually you get a wince or a frown from the person they're with.
Maybe not.
Because things have changed so much, but this person with the brain injury just doesn't see that. And it's a hallmark of a brain injury, that they just don't have that understanding or insight.
Because there can be personality changes,
Sure.
depression issues,
Yep.
Mood disorders, all kinds of problems that the person is just not self-aware. And a spouse would be the best person to actually describe those problems.
How long should a person expect on that first meeting down with one of you two or your associates at Murphy Batista? Is it reasonable to expect an hour? I mean, we're talking personal injuries and some pretty serious matters here. An hour or more?
I'd say an hour and a half
Okay.
on average.
Yep.
Sometimes less, sometimes more.
Right. And obviously, I mean, murphybatista.com is the website, friends, and all of the contact numbers for Steve or Joe Murphy or any of the other lawyers and their associates are available on the website. But clearly, call first, Steve, make an appointment, and will the person who takes your call and sets up the appointment advise, or it'd be helpful when you came down to see our lawyers that you brought along this, and this. Will that be passed along on the phone?
Yeah, typically if I'm not in the office and they speak to my paralegal to get a little bit of background, I'll get a memo about what has transpired.
Sure.
But I'll often call that person in advance, talk to them, get a little bit of background, tell them what they should bring in addition to that first meeting. They don't have to bring everything to the first meeting because they may not even, if they don't hire you immediately, it can just be a conversation.
Sure.
But just to help assess what's going on and give you the best advice early on, the more documentation, the better.
And that first meeting, by the way, will take place in Suite 2020 at 650 West Georgia. That would be the downtown Vancouver offices of Murphy Batista, LLP. Joe Murphy and Steve Gibson in studio with us on The Law Show here on AM 650, and we'll be right back with more.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is AM 650's The Law Show.